Good afternoon. Welcome to our second year of Lunchtime Learning. I am so excited. My name is Malva Daniel Reed. I'm the Assistant Chief Academic Officer for Graduate and Online Education at the university. Last year we had a very successful Lunchtime Learning. It's 12 to 1. It will be recorded and put up on the graduate program website. Today we are really excited to have Dr. Yolanda Plummer, who is a professor in the School of Business and Public Administration, and also the chair of the Institutional Review Board. So I am going to continue to let Dr. Plummer take it over, and as David indicated, under the view put side by side so that she is highlighted along with her slides. Dr. Plummer, it's all yours.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Dr. Reed. Welcome to the Lunchtime webinar on the Institutional Review Board submission process. As Dr. Reed mentioned, I chair the Institutional Review Board. And what I wanted this afternoon was to share with you all actually the process to submit an IRB application and when to submit an IRB application. The university's Institutional Review Board is in place for the protection of humans who are involved in your research, often referred to as human research subjects. And the university is committed to the protection of the rights of those humans participating in your research. And this is in compliance with federal regulations, excuse me. And this all started or was founded by researchers who were studying and found that humans were not being protected, or rather their rights were not being protected. And if you look up references such as the Nuremberg Code and the Declaration of Helsinki and the Belmont Report, they all focus on ethical practices in research, as well as the protection of human subjects in your research. And this is just one of them that I highlighted, was the Belmont Report. And in this report, 3 key focal points were highlighted: respect for persons, meaning the participants in your research. When you submit an IRB application, a key piece of that application is your informed consent. And that means that participants are made aware of the purpose of the study, that they have the option to withdraw from your study without any penalty, and that is voluntary. In addition to that, the beneficence. What are the interests? Are the interests of your research, do they have the participants in mind? You want to minimize any risk to your participants as well as maximize the benefit. In addition, justice. You want to ensure that the distribution of the burdens and the benefits of research are equally distributed. And then the IRB is composed of several members within the university. These members are appointed by the Vice President for Research and Graduate Programs. Individuals represent diverse backgrounds as well as disciplines, both male and female. And then there's always one member who we refer to as a community member, who is outside, who's not affiliated with the university. And then there's also individuals whose area is non-scientific as well. So what is human subjects research? We're looking at research that you may say, hey, I want to survey a group of individuals to do A or B. Well, you're conducting a systematic investigation and you're trying to obtain some form of knowledge. In addition to that, you must alert the university, meaning the Institutional Review Board, and indicate what is your recruiting process, what type of evaluation and or research methodology that you plan to undertake. And then when you're doing a survey, is it going to be in person or will it be online? And so when you see the term human subjects research, we're literally talking about the participants who are engaged and involved in the research and from whom the data will be obtained. And when we look at human subjects research, we're looking at the systematic investigation. This refers to all student conducted research. And let me stop right here. For example, some of the students I know are conducting research in their classes or a part of a research project. Generally, all of those projects or requests must be submitted to the institutional review board. And the review board will make a determination if that research is deemed exempt. In addition to that, it would be applicable to independent research projects, graduate projects, involving surveys, involving participants. And in general, class projects do not require IRB. However, here again, this is where it gets tricky. Oftentimes professors say, hey, I'm taking a survey of my class and I'm going to use it to make modifications or improvements. That's fine if that is all you're going to do. Once you begin talking about publishing or releasing those that data or with the findings, then yes, it must still be submitted to the IRB. Even if you're just doing something in the classroom, it still must be submitted to the IRB for us to indicate or deem that it is exempt, so that we can have a file of it on record. And again, this is something that I was kind of jumped ahead when you were talking about human beings being engaged in a physical activity. That's generally more or less on the biology, scientific or clinical side. But then also when you're requesting participants to engage in a survey or questionnaire, whether it's in person or online. And when you do that, you have to make sure and ensure that all information, there's no identifiable information on those surveys. Generally, you're advised to use some type of code so that there's no, as I mentioned before, no identifiable information being being seen. And then also you want to ensure that once you've collected all that data, where is it being stored? Is it stored on a laptop? Is it stored on a flash drive? But then who has access to it? You want to ensure that no third parties can access it. And then when you're, again, a key point here when you're talking about your data, anyone who is participating in your research, meaning you as the investigator, any research assistants, all of you will be required to complete the city training, which focuses on responsible conduct of human subject research. And what is not human subject involvement or human subject participation? When you're using publicly available data, that may be from the census or that's publicized in local newspapers or journals. If you're just pulling from secondhand data that's already published, then that is not deemed human subject. But again, you would still submit it to the IRB for the team or the committee to review, and then that's when it would be deemed exempt. And here again, I want to restate the university's policy for protection of human subjects in research. Any research that's being conducted by and under the direction of a UDC employee, faculty member, or students is considered research, and again, must be submitted to the IRB and would need to be considered for protection of the human subjects. Oftentimes, someone will say, hey, I'm going to recruit, I'm going to put up a flyer. Well, you can no longer just put up or post a flyer around campus to recruit participants for your research. One, permission, from what I understand, has to be obtained from the vice president's office to post flyers. In addition to that, the IRB must must review that study as well, or at least receive that application in IRB Net. And when students are conducting research with their professors, that too must be sent or reviewed before the IRB. And on those applications, the professor is the principal investigator and the student is the co-principal investigator. If you are unsure, if you ever have a question, you can either email me directly or email irb@udc.edu, with the title of your submission and then the title with all in caps, determination of IRB approval. it is not uncommon for individuals to email me and say, I have a question. My students are doing research. Do I need to submit? How long will it take? And generally, we have been reviewing and providing a response to individuals in 1 to 2 days. Now, in that response, it does not always mean that it has been approved. Oftentimes, we are requesting someone to make modifications. And you may ask, what are modifications? Modifications may be that there is a consent form that is missing, or there may be a signature missing from a faculty member, for instance, if it's a faculty student teamwork or project, the faculty member needs to be listed again as the principal investigator and must have their signature. And then the student will be listed as the co-PI. And then once your application has been submitted, the first things that the committee does review and look at is whether or not the training certification, the city CITI training certificate, is attached. And I will also speak about that. This is a free training that the university offers to both faculty and students. And it is the certification that certifies that you have completed the training regarding the protection of human subjects in research. If you need further information from me, I will be happy to share that, as well as send that out regarding the city certification. That is one area where a lot of the researchers and students often get caught up. And the city certification is valid for 3 years. And I guess I jumped. This is the same thing I just explained. The IR is provided through the Collaborative Institutional Training Institution. It is free, it is web-based, and it does take a few hours to complete, maybe 2 to 3, a little more, it depends on, it depends on you. It's based, it's on an individual basis. And right here are the instructions on how to access the city training. I generally have emailed this, and I can also send it to Dr. Reed so that we can have it posted on the graduate website. I do think it would be a good, this would be a good piece of information to have posted, because I do not think it is posted on the Office of Sponsored Programs website. It may be, but this pretty much describes the process. Once you click on the link to access the city training website, you would follow these directions, and then you would look for the topic, responsible conduct of research. You would also select the University of the District of Columbia. And instead of University of the District of Columbia, it may be listed as University of District of Columbia. And the IRB's process begins when you, as the researcher, submit your application to the IRB net. If you are a new user, you will be required to set up your name and username and password. And then the chair, will receive a notification that there's a new application. The application is distributed to the committee. 1 to 2 team members will review it. The chair emails the team members to ask for the application to be reviewed. And as I mentioned before, the review process, one of the committee members may go through it and not find anything to change. And then they would return it and submit in the system that it can be approved. Then there's a case where there may be some changes or modifications needed. And then you, as a researcher, will get a notification that there are changes that are needed. Once you've made the changes, you would resubmit to an IRB because your application would be unlocked for you to go back in. And at that point, it would be reviewed again by the committee members to ensure that the changes are made. And we generally try to conduct this again, as I mentioned, in 1 to 2 days so that there's a quick turnaround. I know oftentimes there's the question of how long is it going to take? I know you all generally meet monthly. Well, since the pandemic, we've been meeting weekly, if not daily. So you don't have to necessarily worry about that process of having to wait over a month to get a response. And right here, as I mentioned earlier, you may have heard me use the term whether or not research may be exempt. And you will see the categories right here risk categories, what determines or deems whether or not your research is exempt, and whether it's expedited and whether it requires a full board vote. And there are instances where individuals are on a tight deadline to apply for local, state, and or federal grants. In those scenarios, we do make every effort to accommodate, provide the signatures that you need for those routing forms for the Office of Sponsored Programs, as well as providing any supporting documentation that needs to accompany the letter to the funder. Again, these are some examples of different studies that have been considered not human subject research, exempt and expedited. And we have discussed, some of these examples of the exempt studies would be surveys that focus with adults collecting non-sensitive information. We also tend to think of that information that's secondary, something that's already widely published. And then again, I mentioned some of the ones for examples of expedited studies, even though these may not directly apply to us. In our case, or here at the university, some of the examples of expedited studies or incidences have involved individuals who are on a tight deadline to meet a grant or a funder deadline, or someone may be ready to recruit and just have a tight deadline. Either way, we make every accommodation to you as a researcher to promote and support your research. At this point, I'd be happy to take any questions. If you have any questions for me, I'd be glad to take them. I do appreciate your time, and thank you.
Dr. Plummer, you want to stop sharing your screen and we can open it up to
Yes.
the audience for questions?
Thank you.
All right, there is a question in the chat from Jasmine. What about research that focuses on unpublished archives? This is not typically considered human subjects.
Again, it would still come before the board for review. And if it's determined that it is exempt, then you would receive a letter confirming that your research is exempt and you would be able to move forward. Okay. It's not a case where you say, hey, this isn't research. This doesn't need to go before the IRB. Let me begin. No, because anytime you're conducting research, you have to keep in mind that you could be putting the university at risk because you're conducting research under the university's name or affiliation. And thank you for that question.
Okay, so we're opening it up for questions. And while we're waiting, I have a few.
Yes.
Yes, the recording is going to be available. All right. So what I'm hearing is that anytime you're looking to do any type of research, it should come through the IRB process, and then you'll tell me whether I need to be exempt or not exempt or whatever. But did I understand that correctly?
Yes, Dr. Reed, that is correct. If you are undertaking research, and particularly if you're under the name of the university, and as with other universities, it is expected that you do submit an application to the Institutional Review Board just to protect yourself and the university, just to be sure. It's best to obtain the letter from the IRB that says my research was reviewed and they certified it as being exempt. So yes.
And in the same vein of that question, and it may be a loaded question, this information is super important for faculty and students to know. It should be like one of the first things that they learn at first or second day of class, because I know, having taught before, you just start collecting data and you may not think about publishing it, but you really don't think about the rules and regulations. So what are we doing to ensure that our faculty and our students just understand that it is super important to do this process before you start collecting any type of data?
Well, I know for one, Dr. McCrary has been very adamant about having this information or regarding the Institutional Review Board discussed at professional development for the faculty when we return. I know in the School of Business, we discuss it in our faculty meetings. And it's also incumbent upon the faculty members when they're speaking with their students, as far as research, for them to provide this information and encourage them to apply to the IRB as well.
And we have another question in the chat. What about a book review? Do you have to submit an application for ITB? I don't know what ITB is.
They may have meant IRB. If you're doing the book review just strictly for an assignment to submit, then that's fine. But if you're doing the book review, let's say for a newspaper or a magazine article, then yes, you would need to. But if it's primarily for submission of a class assignment, then no.
So Jasmine, Dr. Yarish, is she answering your questions? You may want to take yourself off mute.
Jasmine, does that answer your question? She says she cannot come off of mute.
Okay. All right. Any other questions for Dr. Plummer?
Yes, I have a question. This is Kanika Johnson. As a doctoral student, we've had assignments in class where there's been the need to interview people. Should that have gone through the IRB too? Because I did see it said classroom research.
Hi, Kanika. How are you? Kanika, is this for published material?
No, but then it could have been. So, I mean, it could have been later, but I've actually interviewed people for work and then may have come back to this later and said, oh, I could write something about this. But
then
at
yes.
the time, then, okay.
Yes, that type of information should be submitted through the Institutional Review Board.
If I've already done it, should I still then write this up?
Are you planning on publishing those findings?
Possibly. Or
Then
just
yes.
doing something with it. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay, we have a raised hand.
Yes, top of the day. I'm really enjoying this. It's very informative. This is Niana Rasiyan. Thank you so much, Dr. Plummer, for clarifying those little details. I have a question. If
Yes.
you are part of an independent review board not connected to the university, for example, they submit articles to you to ask you to review them in terms of content with regard to subject matter. Do we need to get some kind of permission from you all to do that?
No, that's totally separate. And thank you for that question. No. But is that something similar to being a peer reviewer?
Exactly.
No, that's something, because that's an external activity. And as you mentioned, that's independent.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Good. All right, any other questions? I have several. All right, so Dr. Plummer, I know you said it takes 1 to 2 days. What is the best time that you would really like for a person to submit an application to give you all really fair time to review and get back to them in a timely manner?
That's a loaded question too. A lot of that depends on the individual. Very few individuals who are submitting most individuals want it back as soon as possible.
Right.
But to be fair to a reviewer, sometimes reviewers need at least 3 to 5 days. I'm going to be honest. It just depends on what your load is. I know I primarily deal with a lot of the emergency cases. Hey, I need it now, or I've already done this. And so I try to accommodate as much as possible. But to be fair to our reviewers and to our team, at least 3 to 5 days. At least 3 to 5.
At least, and I would say, understanding that this is not your only job at the university. Yes. So right. Therefore, if in fact they gave you a week, at least 5 days, then that would be important. All right, I see Ms. Lucas.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Plummer, so much. This has been very informative. I have an instructor and she's part-time, and she has approached me to use our English as a second language class as a study for part of her dissertation. Mm-hmm. Does that need to go through the IRB?
Thank you, Professor Lucas. Yes, it does.
Okay.
Definitely, because it's a part of her dissertation.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. And Dr. Plummer, while we have a group here, can you pull up the website that people would go to in order for us to submit the forms that are required?
IRB.net,
Uh-huh.
IRBnet.com. Sure. Okay. Now here. Okay. You're kind of showing Dr. Reed. Okay.
Sorry, I put you on the spot. I should have had it up.
Oh, no.
myself.
It is generally open. And then I will share it. Okay. Let me do this.
Well, Dr. Plummer is looking for that. Any other questions for her? Okay, so how did you get there?
Okay, in the presentation, you saw where I had IRB.net.
Yes.
I didn't have IRB.net.org. It's actually IRB.net.org. And so you start right here. And for me, I have my password, but if you're a new registrant, you see right here, it says new user registration. So you'd start right there, create your new registration. And then you would you would sign in, and it would direct you to submit. Okay, I remember my password. And once I get in here.
And this is where you said we have to identify the University of the District of Columbia, correct?
No, that's the piece on the city training.
Okay.
That's on the city training. But right here is where this is where you actually submit your application. So
Okay.
you begin, this is what I see, but there's, you come in here, and once you begin, there's a place where you can, you begin typing in your information. Okay. Okay, this is something, let me go back. It's hard for me to show you
Right.
as somebody starting, but when you come in, you're going to be on that main screen, and you're going to obtain a username and a user ID, a username and a password. And once you go in, it's going to ask you to submit, fill in that. There's an application you fill in, the name, the principal investigator, co-principal investigator. In addition to that, you have to fill out the name. Then it asks you a series of questions. Is this research exempt? Will it provide any harm? It gives you a list of questions. Then the investigator has to provide, they can attach a copy of their CV, and then they also will provide a brief description. And generally people attach that of the type of study or about the study. And you would do an introduction, your research methodology, your recruiting strategy, as well as attach a copy of your city certificate. In addition to that, include information about any other researchers that may be engaged in this research with you. So again, you would start right here at irbnet.org to submit that IRB application. And as a new user, you would start here, new user registration right here. This is what it would look like right here. And then you would continue from there.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Plummer. Also, I'd like to talk about the city training.
Mm-hmm.
And again, would this be a recommendation you may want to put in places that when graduate students, and because I'm in charge of graduate students, but I would say most students that may want to do some type of research,
Mm-hmm.
would you recommend that they take that city training, like when they first come in, so that you said it lasts for 3 years?
Yes.
So that if they ever decide to do any type of research, that they already have it done. I mean, that training done, because you said it was 2 to 3 hours. So it's not something you can do pretty quickly. It's something you need to have planned for. So would you recommend that we could encourage graduate students or any students or faculty that are planning to do research to go ahead and do that training if they haven't?
I would Dr. Reed, I would definitely recommend any faculty and or student who is anticipating research to do it as soon as possible, whether you can do it during a break, meaning, let's say during spring break and or the Christmas break, or even the summer between when we return to fall semester. That's always a great opportunity as well. Or and oftentimes if you get stuck, let's say if you're right now in the thick of it and says, oh, I'm about to do research, it may take a couple of hours on a Saturday or Sunday afternoon.
Okay, good, thank you. Dr. Guerin?
Thank you, Dr. Reed. Thank you, Dr. Plummer.
You're welcome.
This is a really helpful presentation, and from my experience, I've really appreciated your insight into the proposals that have gone forward. I tell my colleagues you are very pragmatic and helpful, and we end up with a better proposal when we're done. So I'm truly grateful. My question for you is this. I've lately taken over supervision of the Master Naturalist program. Our Master Naturalists tend to be adults, many of them retired from careers, and some of the things they want to do with this training are go out into the community. One of them, she's away now, so she's not doing this right now, but she wants to go out and survey small business owners for why they don't have more trees in their parking lot, and then share this data with Casey Trees. Sounds great, totally in line with what we do here at the university.
Right.
Does that go through you too?
Absolutely.
And then, given that she's not a student, would me or one of my colleagues have to be the lead on that?
That is correct, Dr. Guerin. You would be the principal investigator, and the
Okay.
other researcher would be the co-principal investigator. In addition, both of you all would have to provide city certificates.
Got it. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Is that Naya Rice?
Yeah, this is your opportunity to ask those burning questions. And I've gone through this presentation like maybe 3 times. And each time I go through it, something else jumps out at me of something that we as a university, faculty members and students should really be paying attention to. So if you planning to do research and you haven't taken that city training, I think it's critical that you do so. So that you are now in alignment with what you need to be doing as you move forward. We will make this recording available to you as a person who actually has registered for this system. We did a new system this time, so I'm glad to see that people actually connected with it. And we will be offering our lunchtime learning at least twice a month. And so we have another one coming up at the end of September. But for this, any parting words, Dr. Plummer, about our takeaways that we as faculty, staff, and students should be really zeroing in on to be in line with what the regulation says, what what the university requires, and so forth.
Okay, Dr. Dr. Reed, did you want me to answer that question?
Yes.
City training. I will post that city training link before we get off, and then I'll also share it with Dr. Reed so that it can be posted on the graduate website. But my parting words to all would be when you submit your application, please remember to include the informed consent form. This is the one area or the one part that everyone forgets. And the informed consent is a one-sheeter. I will also provide that to Dr. Reed to post on the website. And it's a form that you would be providing to any participant in your research. For example, if I'm going to conduct a survey, whether it's online or in person or a questionnaire, even a focus group, or as Dr. Guerin said, she has individuals in the Master Naturalist program who are out in the community. You need to be able to explain to the individuals who partake in this study an explanation about the study, the purpose of the study, who it will be shared with, and then also a contact at the university if they have questions or just background information or even an issue or a problem with the survey. But it's also to note in that informed consent form that participation is completely voluntary. Now, there are some studies where individuals do receive compensation. And even in those studies, individuals still have the right to withdraw without penalty. So again, I cannot stress enough how important it is to take the city training, and the city training is quite valuable. I took it last year, didn't realize I hadn't taken it, and my 3 years had expired. And I found it very informative, and it will really help you prior to beginning your research journey.
Well, Dr. Plummer, I want to thank you so much for your invaluable information. I think this should be a mandatory training for everyone that becomes a graduate student here or a faculty member, because so many times we trip ourselves up for just not knowing or actually reading. So Kanika, I see that you have a question.
Yes, one final very quick
Oh, that's okay. We still have time, but I don't want to.
I know you're winding up, but just when Dr. Guerin asked that question, and I just want to make sure I understand, as a student, could I be the lead researcher, or would I be the PI, or would I need a professor to be the PI? I understand that everything that's public facing research where there's a university affiliation comes through. But as a student, and would I be the PI, and would I need to have another professor researcher with me?
Thank you, Kanika. No, you would always be the co-PI. Your faculty member or professor would be your principal investigator.
Okay, so if it's a project, then I would, so that's for class, but then if it's something for my dissertation, I would be the co-PI, and the dissertation, another professor would be
right.
the PI.
Right, and pretty much what's happening is your faculty member is sponsoring you, or rather they're serving.
Okay.
You see what I mean?
Okay.
Doesn't necessarily mean they're conducting it, but for this process, they will be listed as the principal investigator.
Yes, got it. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And I want to just thank you all for the questions, because
Yes.
I think it's really important that everybody's perspective be heard. And Kanika, thank you from a PhD or doctoral student perspective. Maybe you and I need to talk offline about, what we need to make sure is available to all our students as we move forward to ensure that they're all in compliance. So again, thank you all for coming. I hope that you learned something different. I did. Every time I hear this presentation, I think it's important. Dr. Plummer has put in the link to the city training. I think it's important that everybody know that as a part of that. Can I just ask the question, how many of you knew about the city training and have actually taken it before? Just do a show or raise a hands that you've already taken the city training. Okay. I see one hand. Dr. Guerin, I'm assuming your hand's back up for that.
I see 3, Dr. Reed.
3?
That's
Okay.
correct. I've taken the training.
Good, excellent. Any insights on the training that you could share with the group before we leave?
I will say it took me longer than 3 hours, Dr. Plummer, but it was, it had been a while since I'd done it. It is not difficult, but you should set aside some time to do it. That's true.
Good, that's good.
I think I was trying to be kind.
didn't want to scare everybody off.
Right.
Thank you.
I think
all right, so thank you all for sharing. I appreciate you coming to our first Lunchtime Learning webinar. Again, we are working with the Center for Advancement of Learning. So if you go on their calendar, you can see all of the workshops that we have already earmarked for the all the way through the academic year. So we have all our workshops that are available, and they're all related to improving you as a student, as a faculty member, us as a community, to make sure that we are in compliance with what we need to do and that our research is not going to be questioned because we didn't follow the rules and regulations. So my job is to make sure you know. And if you don't know, just let me know and we'll put together a workshop on that topic, because it is one that my job is to make sure we provide you the resources. So if I don't know what you need, I don't know. But if you find that you want us to do a workshop on something, just let me know and we can put them together as quickly as we can get the speaker and the time on our calendars. So great. Dr. Plummer, is that your hand up?
Yes, and thank you, Dr. Reed. I'm going to piggyback off of something you just said. I have been going to the doctoral program classes and speaking and presenting about the Institutional Review Board process. And I am more than happy to do the same for anyone else who might need me to do that. Actually, I'm doing that later today. So.
All right, well, this concludes our first lunchtime learning. Dr. Plummer, words cannot begin to express my gratitude and appreciation for this workshop. I think it's invaluable. The tape will be available on our graduate website. If you go to the UDC website, go to academics, you'll see C.A.L. at the very top. Click on that and go to graduate programs of study, and you'll see information. While I have you here, that website is for us. And so if you are working in the graduate program or you're a graduate student and you want to be highlighted, just send me the information. And we want to keep our website alive so that it's not just stagnant. So we're looking to highlight faculty members, students, programs, so that we can tell our story at the University of the District of Columbia, because it is a fantastic story. We just don't tell it enough. So again, I want to thank you for participating. I hope you can join us on the 27th. David put the next link to our next one on the 27th. They're always on Tuesdays, and they're always 12 to 1 via Zoom. So we really appreciate this, and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you. Everyone have a great day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.